Good evening. I call to order this January 4th, 2021 meeting of the Winston-Salem City Council. Certainly the City Council and I wish everyone a very happy new year as we look forward to a great 2021. Pursuant to the policy adopted by this City Council relative to virtual meetings, I've determined that it's not feasible tonight for us to meet physically together. And due to the Safer at Home order, all council members are participating virtually. Council members will vote by roll call. When the vote comes up, a council member will be recognized and they will state their vote. Would the City Clerk please call the roll, please?
Councilmember Larson.
Present.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Mundy.
Present.
Councilmember Scipio.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Here.
Councilmember Taylor.
Present.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Here.
Councilmember Burke.
Here.
Thank you very much. Would you please join the City Council and me in a moment of silence? Thank you very much. Tonight's agenda of the City Council is comprised of two parts, the general agenda and the consent agenda. It is always the practice of this council to take the consent agenda as the first order of business. Items on this agenda have been approved or recommended by a committee of the City Council or are being submitted in accordance with established city procedures. There'll be no discussions of the items on this agenda unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered individually. Items not removed from the consent agenda will be approved by one motion. The meeting is being televised live tonight on TV 13, and it will be replayed Tuesday at 9 a.m. and again Wednesday at 9 p.m. Of course, copies of our agenda as well as videos of previous meetings are always available to the public online at the city's website, www.cityofws.org, and just simply click on the Watch Meetings Online option. Council members, are there any items you wish to pull from the consent agenda? Councilmember Mundy.
Items C3 and C11, please.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, C8.
Okay. And Councilmember Scipio, I believe.
C21.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion on the balance?
I move for approval of the balance of the consent agenda. I beat you, Jeff.
Second.
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 Thank you very much. So we'll go to the roll call to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yay.
And Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
And Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We'll go to item C3 first.
Item C3, resolution awarding contract for concrete pipe to advanced drainage systems, recommended by Finance Committee.
Councilmember Mundy.
The question on this is more budget related. If I'm reading this correctly, I'm sorry, did somebody have something else?
No, go ahead, Councilmember Mundy.
The question is budget related. If I'm interpreting this correctly, the order is for $266,000, but it is for a full 12-month period. And it sounds to me like it's on order. So are we only invoiced as we order these parts, or do we pay for this full amount up front? I'm just trying to figure out budget repercussions of this expense.
Mr. Duquesne, can you comment on that?
I'll let Mr. Taylor, our Director of Operations, take that one.
Excuse me, Mr. Taylor, please go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Jones, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, other members of the council. In reference to this particular item, we actually set aside the amount in the budgets of two departments, parks and recs, as well as the street division for this entire year. Of course, we would not pay the full amount unless we actually utilize the pipes.
So we're not obligated to that full amount unless we do order and use them.
That is correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mundy, would you like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve as worded.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilmember McIntosh. Any discussion? All right, we'll go to the roll call to approve item C3. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Yes.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
And Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item C8.
Item C8, resolution awarding purchase order for scale bed dump trucks to Triad Freightliner of Greensboro, recommended by Finance Committee.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams, I believe you wanted this one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Taylor, I guess, we order dump trucks, loaders, and even in C9 and C10, I think, yeah, the carts. I'm just wondering, could the council get a report of our past purchases of what we look like? Like in X year, we had to replace this many. The next year, we had to replace this many. And coming at us, what do we anticipate replacing? And what do other cities comparable to us in North Carolina look like on their replacement of critical equipment like this? Thank you. That's all I wanted.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Once again, we can put together a report showing our historic
And one more question,
Okay.
Mr. Taylor, I'm sorry. On the carts, on the rollout carts, I saw where we're replacing lids. Things like that, I mean, I guess all of us should know why we replace the lids, but that's another question too. How often are we replacing lids? Are the lids damaged by the trucks? Are they damaged by the citizens or what? And when we do that, what's the number that we're recycling and putting back into service or that sort of thing as well? If you could put that information together for us.
Yes, ma'am. We'll bring all of that information back and provide you with a report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I move for approval of consent item 8.
Second. Clark.
Thank you, Councilmember Clark, second. Any discussion? Go to roll call. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor. Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. Item C11.
Item C11, resolution declaring certain city-owned equipment surplus and authorizing the sale thereof, recommended by Finance Committee.
Councilmember Mundy, I believe you wanted this one.
Yes, and Mr. Taylor, we're putting you on the spot tonight. I want to ask a question. That these vehicles have all, I assume, been fully depreciated, and so there's no impact on the budget from a negative standpoint to sell these vehicles as salvage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Mundy, what I would say to you, they've been depreciated. They've been underappreciated in every kind of appreciation. We have driven them to their maximum usage, and they are only fit for salvage at this time.
Okay, so not a huge amount of money coming in as revenue when we sell these, but my question then is, has that revenue been budgeted? Will that be incremental revenue to the current budget, or has an assumption already been made in our budget that this revenue will come back to us?
I will have to get you some full details on that. My understanding of it is it's difficult to assume generated from the surplus because it's tied to market value, it's tied to that particular function with the auction. So that can be challenging at times.
Okay. And then one last question is this an annual thing that happens, or is it over a period of time we collect enough vehicles that we sell them in groups and lots?
Yes, sir. It can vary. For the past 12 months, I think we've probably had 2 to 3 auctions because we've had a large number of vehicles that needed to be removed from our fleet to try to help maintain our efficiency and effectiveness.
Okay, thank you.
I get a motion, Mr. Mundy?
Yes, I move approval of consent item 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Josh. Any discussion? All right, we'll vote now for item C11. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
And Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. We'll now go to item C21.
Item C21, consideration of items relating to Bellevue Recreation Center.
Councilmember Scipio, I believe, wanted this item.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Mayor Pro Tem Adams and fellow council members. Happy New Year to all of you. We have a great year to look ahead. Before though, Mr. Mayor, this might be out of order, but I do want to alert the residents in the city that we have lost another wonderful resident, Mr. J.K. Irvin, who's the husband of Miss Minnie Irvin, who's had beauty services for years on Patterson Avenue. He has been a real community leader. He was 89 years old. And I just want to lift up that family right now with all of our prayers and blessings.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Now, getting back to C21, the Bellevue Recreation Center. I like to, this particular, I am in favor of renovating our recreation centers. However, I am very concerned about using almost half of the funds in the Land Parks Acquisition Fund without us discussing the future use of those funds broadly. I'm also concerned about programming in that center, as well as programming in all of our recreation centers. What's happening now, it's been closed for a couple of years, well, since COVID. And I know we just received a recommendation of some possible changes in operating hours and some programming. And I want us to consider, if we're going to put in about $4 million in a new structure, that we definitely are being wise about what its future use will be, and to also put programming into that. I'm also concerned about all of the maintenance that's needed on our 17 recreation centers. And we do have 79 different parks. And I would love for us to take time to evaluate this move of using those funds in connection with all the other things that's going on and needed in parks and recreation, which is one of those amenities that we provide for our residents. I would like to move that we return this recommendation to both the Community Development Committee and Public Works Committee so that we can discuss in detail the impact of using the $500,000 from Parks and Acquisition Fund.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion and second to return this item back to Finance and the Housing and General Government Committee. This will be just a substitute motion. We'll do a roll call on that motion to return it. The action would, the vote would be yes, would be to return, no would be not to return. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
No.
Councilmember Mundy.
question before I vote is, are there any time restrictions that could limit this funding in any way, or is the spending of the bond money at our pace?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mundy. City Manager, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's at your discretion, this pace.
Okay. In that case, I would vote yes as well.
Councilmember Scipio is
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
No.
Councilmember Taylor.
Absolutely not, no.
Councilmember McIntosh.
No.
Councilmember Burke.
No.
All right, the noes have it. The substitute motion fails. We'll go back to the original motion to approve. Well, excuse me, we do need a motion on this. Councilmember Taylor and Councilmember Clark just came out of finance unanimously, but it's Councilmember Taylor's ward. So I'd recommend Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to approve item C21.
And I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now the voting is to approve item C21. A vote yes, votes to approve that.
I would like to have some discussion. Can we have discussion?
Yes, Councilmember Larson, please.
Yes, I'm going to have to vote against this, and let me be clear because it's not just a yes/no vote. We are taking money that's been allocated in a bond specifically for park acquisition, and we are reallocating it to a capital improvement project. I'm not sure that's exactly what the public had in mind when they allocated the funding for bond. We know that land acquisition is an important part of our parks program, development program, and in this particular case, we seem to be taking an extraordinarily large percentage of that park acquisition fund and dedicating it specifically to one location for a capital improvement project that's already been funded at $3 million. And that I find troublesome, and I'll have to vote against it.
Thank you. All right, to the roll call then. Councilmember Larson is a no, I believe you said, but I'll let you say it.
That's no, yes.
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
No.
Councilmember Scipio.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Yes.
And Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-3 to approve resolution and item C21. Thank you, council members. We'll now go to the general agenda, which is comprised of the following items. There are 4 zoning petitions. There are 2 UDO text amendments. There's an item transferring ownership of a certificate of public convenience and necessity, an item related to a conservation easement, an item related to the lease of space in the Union Station, and 2 items related to boards and commissions. The zoning petitions, the UDO text amendments, and the certificate of public convenience, as well as the conservation easement items, are listed as public hearings. When these public hearings are called, persons will be given an opportunity to speak virtually. If no one wishes to speak, I'll close the public hearing and the city council will consider the item. Should also point out that as to the public hearing, written comments will be accepted on the public hearing items until 7 p.m. tomorrow, January 5th. Written comments may be sent to the city clerk's office at P.O. Box 2511, Winston-Salem 27102, or by email to sandrk@cityofws.org. Written comments, if any, will be forwarded to the mayor and members of the city council, and if desired, the appropriate council member, based on the written comments, can make a motion to reconsider an item at a subsequent meeting. Ms. Kenny, will you have the first item, please?
Item G1, public hearing on zoning petition of Nathaniel Humayan from RS9 to LBL. Property is located north of the intersection at Old Greensboro Road and Harvest Drive, located in the Northeast Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Thank you. I understand there's no one who has signed up to be heard on this item. So therefore, I will close the public hearing, and I would recognize Councilmember Burke if you'd like to proceed or if you'd like a comment from the staff.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Adams, and council members. I move for approval of the statement of the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, W-3448. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Several seconds. Any discussion? All right, we'll go to the roll call vote to approve item G1. Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy,
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh,
Aye.
and Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Burke. Item G2.
Item G2, public hearing on zoning petition of Windsor Holdings LLC from PB to GBL. Property is located on the west side of South Stratford Road, south of Knollwood Street, located in the Southwest Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Again, I understand there's no one who has signed up to be heard on this particular item, so therefore I'll close the public hearing and I'll recognize Councilmember Mundy.
Yes, in light of approval and no objections, I would move for approval of 1, the statement of consistency for the approval of this item, and 2, W-3457.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember McIntosh. Any discussion of this item? Seeing none, we'll go to the roll call. Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy,
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh,
Aye.
and Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Mundy. Item G3.
Item G3, public hearing on site plan amendment of Jonathan M. Brown and Tarina D. Brown for a building expansion and improvements for vehicular circulation on a site previously approved for services A in a LBS zoning district. Property is located on the north side of Welltown Street between Renota Forest Drive and Salem Lake Road, located in the southeast ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Again, no one has signed up to be heard on this particular item, so I'll close the public hearing and I'll recognize Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Item G3 is a routine site plan amendment. The property is currently zoned for limited business special use, and it will remain that way if this item is approved tonight. I just want to say that Mr. and Mrs. Brown has operated this business for well over 20 years in the community in good standing. They're well respected. We all know and love them, and we thank them for their efforts in providing those services to our community. This item was unanimously approved by the Planning Board, and it is consistent with the Southeast Winston-Salem Area Plan. With that being said, I move for 1, approval of the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, W-3456.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Councilmember Scipio and Councilmember Clark. Any discussion of this item? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. Councilmember Larson,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy,
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams,
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor,
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh,
Aye.
and Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Item G4.
Item G4, public hearing on site plan amendment of Wachovia Bank, NA, for changes related to secure access on a site previously approved for services A in a G-O-S zoning district. Property is located on the northwest corner of Sunny Knoll Court and Silas Creek Parkway, located in the North Ward. Planning Board recommends approval of petition.
Thank you. No one has signed up in opposition to this item. Therefore, I'll close the public hearing and I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Members of the council, I would like a small presentation because Wachovia, that's one we don't hear of more, but they're very intricate in our community, and I want people to know that they're still here and they're growing. So I'd like staff to do that, please.
Thank you. Mr. King, would you give us a brief report from the Planning Board?
I'd be glad to, Mayor Joins, and I'll ask Amy Crummell and our staff to go ahead and get that slideshow pulled up for everyone to view. All right, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. This is a site plan amendment request of Wachovia Bank. It's about almost 9 acres, and it's on the northwest corner of Sunny Knoll Court and Silas Creek Parkway. And again, the zoning that's currently in place is general office special use zoning. And again, what we're doing tonight is looking at an amendment to the site plan. Next slide, please. This is the location map with the subject property shown in yellow. Again, you can see the existing building located basically in the center of the site. You can see the surrounding zoning pattern is a bit mixed with commercial, some multifamily, some office zoning there to the north, east, and south, and then some single family zoning zoned RS9 that adjoins the site back there to the west. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial image showing the existing building on the subject property. Next slide, please. And just a few photos taken on site. So this is on Sunny Knoll Court. This is looking into the subject property, and this is largely where the bulk of the changes we're talking about tonight take place. Really some changes to access in this area, and we'll get to that on the site plan shortly. Next slide, please. Here's the existing entrance and guard area to get into the parking for this facility. It's a highly secured facility, and these are the existing guardhouse that's in place. Next slide, please. This is back on Ferncliff and Greencrest Drive. As I showed you, there were some single-family homes that adjoined the site to the west, and these are probably some of the homes that are closest to the site. You can see our zoning sign in the yard there to alert the neighbors of the pending site plan amendment request. The next slide, please. This is an image from the North Suburban Area Plan update, and you can see the pink color there denotes an office land use recommendation, and we're not changing that tonight. What's in place will stay. Next slide, please. So this is a site plan submitted with this request, and you may remember we saw this site come back before council in July of 2020, and at that time there were some changes proposed along the Silas Creek Parkway frontage to accommodate some additional fuel storage tanks and backup generators and things of that nature. Where we're looking at tonight is really two things. You can see on the right-hand side of your image, there's a small rectangle outlined in a bold black line. That's a small building addition there of about 6,000 square feet. And then really the bulk of the changes are along Sunny Knoll Court, reworking that entrance station, reworking that internal parking area, and then the main change is adding another access point out onto Sunny Knoll Court, which you can see on the far left-hand side of this site plan there in front of you. Those are by and large the large part of the changes we're reviewing tonight. So again, the zoning and the land use stay the same. The site plan does change with this request in those areas I mentioned to you. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the request is consistent with the area plan. We would not anticipate any transportation-related issues with this request. And the approved undisturbed area along the northwest side of this site would remain in place. There's a large swath of area there that would not change with this request. Next slide, please. This request was heard by the planning board at their November 12th, 2020 public hearing. There were 3 speakers in support, 1 in opposition. And the issues really discussed at that time were just lighting from vehicles that might be pointing towards the residences back there to the west, concerns about that. And also really about, in the same token, landscape buffer treatments. After that, the applicant did volunteer to add a condition of additional evergreen plantings in that area to help with that issue. And the planning board voted 8-0 to recommend approval of this request with that added evergreen buffer condition. And I'm glad to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Mr. King? I can't see the screen. If we can get back to the, thank you. I don't see any questions, I believe. Councilmember Mundy.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question on the map. It looks like you can access this property from Polo or from Reynolda Road. Is that correct?
No, Councilmember Mundy. This is access to this facility is very limited. So the only vehicular access to the site would come via Sunny Knoll Court.
Okay.
All right.
So Sunny Knoll Court runs between those two, but access to the building is just the one guardhouse.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. If no other questions, I will recognize Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Again, we're just glad that they're still here in Winston-Salem. They've been here for a while at that facility. It is one of the most secure when it comes to your information and finance and credit and everything else in the country. As a matter of fact, It is the largest hub in the southeast of the United States. So I did talk with the representatives from the company, and I told them that it was imperative that they do connect with the neighborhood around them, and they did that, and I asked them to make sure that they heard their concerns. With that, Mayor, I move for approval of one, the statement of for approval of the item, and two, W3455.
Second.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Taylor seconded, and then seconded again by Councilmember Scipio. Any discussion? All right, we'll go to the vote to approve this item. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor? Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous to approve it. Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Item G5.
Item G5, public hearing on a text amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend section 12.2 of the Unified Development Ordinance relating to traffic impact study standards, UDO CC6, recommended by Community Development Housing General Government Committee.
No one has signed up for this public hearing, so I'll close the public hearing, and Mr. David Reed is going to give a brief presentation on what this text amendment is all about. Mr. Reed.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the council. I'll ask Amy Crum on our staff to share our slideshow. So the petitioner is the Planning and Development Services staff, and the request is to amend the traffic impact study standards. Next slide, please. The Traffic Impact Study, or TIS, is prepared by a transportation engineer and provides detailed information on the impacts large developments will have on our road networks. The Winston-Salem Department of Transportation, or Winston-Salem DOT, and the North Carolina Department of Transportation, NCDOT, use information from the study to recommend necessary improvements to our existing roads to mitigate the impacts of the proposed development. Next slide. This text amendment is intended to update and clarify the TIS requirements that were established back in 2001. Most of the text in the amendment remains the same, with some unnecessary text removed and some text reorganized to better match the style of the recently updated UDO. The substantive changes relate to the types of development that are required to provide a TIS at the time of development application. Next slide, please. Since the standards were originally adopted, many significant developments projects have included a TIS as part of the site plan review process. Because the current language does not apply to residential development and does not include specific language requiring a TIS for any review process other than a special use rezoning case, studies have been requested rather than required. Next slide. Ours is the only large North Carolina community where residential development is excluded from the TIS requirements. Winston-Salem DOT and NCDOT staff often identify the need for a TIS during preliminary reviews based on the trip generation of a proposed development, regardless of the development type. Although these studies are warranted, this can come as a surprise to a developer since the language in the ordinance is not consistent with our practice. Next slide. This is a summary of some of the other communities' requirements. The first column has the name of the communities we contacted. The middle column shows the threshold that they use. Ours is very similar, very consistent with the other cities. And then the third column shows that all of the other communities do require TISs for residential developments. Next slide, please. So staff recommends amending the UDO to base the need for a TIS on the amount of traffic generated, regardless of the land use, and requiring a TIS for large developments being submitted for a planning board review, and not just for developments going through special use zoning. Next slide, please. The planning board held a public hearing on November 12th and recommended approval of the text amendment. No one spoke for or against it. And the General Government Committee reviewed the item on December 15th and forwarded it with an approval recommendation. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Are there any questions for Mr. Reed? Don't see anyone. Thank you very much, Mr. Reed. This did come from the Housing General Government Committee. Mayor Pro Tem Adams is chairman of that committee. Would you be ready to make a motion, Mayor Pro Tem?
With a comment that over the past decade, we have been going through our UDOs. Staff has been doing a great job of finding areas that we can improve in and correct and bring current. And this is one of those scenarios. So again, thank you, staff and council and the mayor. You know, these UDOs come now pretty frequently, but also over the past year or so, we've had residents come and citizens that were concerned about development, residential development in their communities. So this gives them another tool in the toolbox to have their voices heard, that the data be presented. With that, I move for one, approval of the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and two, approval of UDO CC6.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember McIntosh. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, we'll move to the roll call to approve this item. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That is unanimous. Now go to item G6.
Item G6, public hearing on ordinance amending Chapter 4 and Chapter 6 of the Unified Development Ordinance to revise bonus density for affordable housing provisions and to revise alternative parking and parking incentives, UDO CC7, recommended by Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee.
Thank you very much. Again, no one has signed up to be heard on this item for a public hearing, and therefore I will close the public hearing. I'm going to ask Tiffany White will make a brief staff report on what this item is about.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Joines, Mayor Pro Tem Adam, and council members. I am here to present UDO CC7, which is a petition from Planning and Development Services staff to amend the Unified Development Ordinance's bonus density for affordable housing provision and alternative parking incentives. Next slide, please. As part of our 2020-2021 work program, planning staff was asked to review the Unified Development Ordinance's bonus density for affordable housing provision, which has been in the UDO since its inception in 1994 and never been used. The Winston-Salem Forsyth County Housing Study and Needs Assessment also recommended reevaluation of this provision to see whether modifications could encourage its use. Next slide, please. Currently, the provision allows for the following. For duplex or multifamily units, there's a 25% density bonus if 40% of the units are set aside for residents making less than 60% of the area median income, or AMI, or if 20% of the units are reserved for residents making less than 50% AMI. On the single family residential development side, there's a 25% density bonus if 25% of the units are sold or rented to residents making less than 80% AMI. Next slide, please. Staff reached out to some local affordable housing developers and the Housing Authority of Winston-Salem to provide some feedback on the provision in its current form and to have them suggest changes to make it more usable. We also asked the city's Community Development Department to review this provision, since a lot of the enforcement aspects and regulatory aspects of the provision actually flowed through the Community Development Department or the Forsyth County Housing and Economic Development Department. And then we also researched bonus density provisions in peer communities to take a look for innovative practices. Next slide, please. According to the developers we spoke with, bonus density can be a useful tool, but it's not been an incentive for inclusion of affordable units in our local market. Developers said that the real drivers of affordability locally were outside the scope of the UDO and included changes to things like stormwater regulations, waived or reduced system development fees, or direct municipal funding for the projects. Community Development and HAWS identified some ordinance language that needed to be updated to reflect current HUD policies and local provisions such as the city's workforce housing policy, again, to keep it in line with the enforcement and regulatory language that we use for other affordable housing programs. Next slide, please. During the research that we did on bonus density provisions, it was indicated that there are other potential incentives to the inclusion of affordable units, one of which was a reduction in parking requirements for affordable units. We looked into some other provisions that peer cities had, and after looking at both those provisions and some of the other work that we are doing locally regarding multifamily housing, parking, transit, we determined that allowing parking reductions for multifamily units within a quarter mile of legacy growth corridors or activity centers and within a quarter mile of transit would further multiple planning goals that we've been working on over the past years. Such developments would only require one parking space per unit, regardless of unit size, significantly reducing development costs and the land area needed for those developments. Next slide, please. The Planning Board held a public hearing in October 2020 and unanimously recommended approval of UDO CC 7. The Community Development, Housing, and General Government Committee recommended this amendment to the full council at its December 2020 meeting as well. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. White. Are there any questions, Ms. White, about this? All right.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Clark.
Just maybe a general comment. I want to be sure we don't win the battle and lose the war here. When you say more density, for example, in single family, you're really saying smaller lots. I don't know what you would do for multifamily. Either you could add an extra layer up top, but again, less green space. The parking, same comment. You can put in less parking, assuming there's less cars. But if there aren't, then you're just going to have more street parking or wherever else you would park. So I just want to be sure that we're not creating a bad looking neighborhood with having very small lots and no parking. So I want to be sure that the developers really think these are good ideas. And it may be, for example, our parking requirement may be too generous anyway. I'll have to make a note every time I drive by an apartment complex. I'll look now and see how crowded it is. But, you know, I remember years ago we had a debate on lot sizes, and there was a general disdain for, I think, 40 and 50-foot lot fronts. We wanted at least, I think, 60 feet or something. So anyway, I just want to be sure that we have appropriately thought through to be sure we're not creating something that we would not be as proud of otherwise. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good points, Mr. Clark. I think there's a lot of movement in this regard across the country. Mr. King was telling me this morning, I believe Charlotte's actually just done a project where the residents cannot have a car in the whole development there. So it's things we got to really be out of the box to hit these affordable targets. Councilmember McIntosh.
Yeah, I want to support this. If you go on the internet and you search for impact of parking regulations on affordable housing, it just lights up. And there are literally dozens of well-written articles about the impact on affordability and construction costs when you require too much parking for a development. This quote comes from the American Planning Association. What's different now is an evolving understanding that urban lifestyles are changing. Traditional parking ratios are outdated, and too much supply can be as harmful as too little. This encourages two things that we want, which is better housing affordability, but also better utilization of our transit system. Since there's a geographic component to this, you've got to be within a certain distance of a transit line. Both those things are positive. Both those things will have minimal impact on traditional single-family quarter-acre lot size, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Adams, recognize you for a comment. And
Councilmember Larson was next, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Councilmember Larson, you want to go?
Yeah, just a matter of clarity of my mind. Does this reduction of parking to one car per unit reflect only for affordable housing units, or does it afford all housing? Does it really apply to the establishment of affordable housing within a development complex? How is it linked to affordable housing?
Yeah, it's not. When we were looking at the provision and how to link it directly with affordable housing, a lot of red flags went up locally. For one thing, tying it to affordable housing that would only last 15 years, when that 15 years was over and that affordable unit was no longer required to be affordable, they'd be out of compliance then with the parking if it was tied to that. In addition, I mentioned that we've put several reports together talking about housing affordability, location near transit, and multifamily development along these growth corridors and activity centers. And it just made more sense to us as planning staff to tie this across the board to multifamily development and remove the specific tie into affordable housing, because reducing parking will make the entire project affordable, which could potentially make the units more affordable. And it just caused too much conflict and too much confusion to tie it to a 15-year time limit or an affordability time limit. And by limiting the geographic area to growth corridors and activity centers, again, we felt like we could further multiple planning goals to that. So this part of the parking incentives is not tied specifically to the affordability or the bonus density.
So it appeared to me that it really doesn't enhance affordable housing, other than the fact that it might make the apartments cheaper if the land is cheaper or the development is cheaper to develop. That's about the limit of what we're going to see in this. Otherwise, yes.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
As a whole project to be affordable as opposed to a certain number of units in it.
Okay.
And tying it to transit locations lowers the housing and transportation, the H&T index value. So, when you're thinking about affordability, it may not just be only rent. It could be rent and transportation costs. And when you take that number in aggregate, having it near transit lowers that H&T index level and can make a place more affordable to someone looking in those areas.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Adams, your committee looked at this, and I recognize you, please.
Thank you. Again, we're pushing a very big boulder up a very steep hill, country. And anytime, again, as you've seen, we're bringing you a lot of these UDOs and amendments to try to hopefully get ahead of the curve. We are 14 to 15,000 units short housing in this city, and we're not the only ones in the country. It's like this everywhere. So it's incumbent upon us as elected officials to sometimes we got to look at things, reimagine what we can do to make it better. If you remember a few months ago or a year ago or two, we brought you a text amendment, UDO change on growth corridors within the city. And I understand that some of the council members push back on that, but the ones of us that live in the urban core fought for it, because if you want to see growth and housing in the urban core in Black neighborhoods and brown neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods, we're going to have to build multifamily units in these growth corridors where the bus goes by. That's on Northwest Boulevard. That's Patterson. That's, Carver Road out, Motor Road area. Councilmember Burke knows who I'm talking about, between Rural Hall and Motor Road. And rural, we got to move the housing and the transportation with the affordability to where the people need it and where they are. So again, I know that this doesn't, fit the round peg in the square hole for some of you. I got that. But our community is very diverse and different all over Winston. And we've got to be, keep our eyes open as to how we can make life equitable and better for all of the community. So with that, Mayor, I move for 1, approval of the statement of consistency for approval of this item, and 2, approval of UDO CC 7.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember McIntosh, seconded. Any further discussion? Moving to the roll call, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Aye.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yay.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
That is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. Item G7.
Item G7, public hearing on ordinance transferring ownership of the certificate of public convenience and necessity of Airport Limo Company for the operation of 2 limousines in the city of Winston-Salem, recommended by Public Safety Committee.
No one has signed up to participate in this public hearing. Therefore, I'll close the public hearing and recognize Councilmember Taylor, Chairman of the Public Safety Committee.
Mayor, members of the council, Mayor Pro Tem, I move for approval of item G7.
Second.
Thank you, Secretary Councilor Scipio. Any further discussion? Going to the roll call to approve this conveyance of this certificate. Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor. And Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Item G8.
Item G8, public hearing on resolution accepting a conservation easement from Duarte and Castro LLC for property restricted from development under the paired parcel provisions of the Salem Lake Watershed Ordinance. Public Works Committee forwarded this item with 3 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. David Reed's going to make a brief presentation on this, about this conservation easement that we're about to get, hopefully.
Good evening again, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of council. This is a request to accept a conservation easement which will help protect the Salem Lake watershed. The conservation easement is required as part of a business expansion that took advantage of the paired parcel provision of the watershed regulations. The request had to meet findings of fact and be approved by the planning board. Next slide, please. The UDO allows 2 non-contiguous parcels in the Salem Lake watershed to be paired and treated as a single lot to meet the impervious coverage requirements of the watershed. On October 8th, the planning board approved a paired parcel development proposal located in Winston-Salem's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction. Next slide, please. As a condition of approval, the planning board required a conservation easement be granted to the city of Winston-Salem prior to the issuance of any permits for the site. This easement is a requirement of the UDO. Adoption of this resolution accepting the conservation easement would satisfy the condition of approval placed on the developer by the planning board. Next slide, please. This is a location map that was shown to the planning board when they heard this item. The property, the yellow site to the north is where their business is. They wanted to do a small expansion, but would cover a little bit more land than is allowed by the low density option, which is covering 24% of the site with impervious surfaces. So they had another property in their ownership that they could pair it with, and that's the yellow item on the bottom of the map. They took a small portion of that and through this conservation easement will tie up that land and use it as credit for the land to the north, allowing them to continue to thrive in their business. Next slide, please. This is the site plan of their development. It's kind of hard to see, but the building is at the very top of the site, and they would do a minor expansion to the right of the building, and that would go over their 24% coverage of the entire site by about 11,000 square feet. Next slide, please. And this is the other property, and you see on the far right side of the site plan, there is that sliver of land, which is exactly 11,000 square feet they need. That would be tied up in perpetuity in an easement. It can never be used as pervious area for this property because it's tied up with the other property. And it's also in a really good location because it's at the confluence of 2 small streams that ultimately drain into the lake. Next slide, please. The City Council has accepted conservation easements in the past for this same purpose. Both Hall Woodward Elementary School and Sedge Garden Elementary School used the paired parcel provision back in around 2007. Next slide, please. This item was discussed at the Public Works Committee on November 10th and was sent forward to the full council for consideration. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Reed? All right, seeing none, Councilmember McIntosh just came out of Public Works Committee. You're chairman of that. I would recognize you.
Move approval of item G8.
Second.
Excuse me, Councilmember McIntosh, I think I forgot to close the public hearing. No one signed up to be heard on this. We'll close the public hearing. And if you wouldn't mind, Chairman McIntosh, to make another motion.
I move approval of item G8.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Scipio. Seconded motion. Any further discussion? All right, going to the roll call to approve this. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
And Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. That's great. Good, better protection for our lake there. Item G9.
Item G9, consideration of items regarding revisions to the agreement with Winston-Salem State University for the lease of space in Union Station. Recommended by Finance Committee with 3 in favor and 1 abstaining.
This is a modified item coming out of finance that does not include the 270 square feet of ticket booth space. Councilmember Clark, you're coming out of your committee. Would you ready for a motion?
I would if I could make just a brief comment.
Yeah.
This space, by the way, it is a 3-story building. When you drive by, it appears to be a 1-story. That's actually the 3rd floor that you see at street level. There's 2 floors below that. The bottom floor is where the City Transportation Department has relocated. The middle floor is the floor in question. The top floor is still available, and we're looking at more of a public use for it. The middle space is proposed to be rented to Winston-Salem State. I will say we have gone back and forth for many years, it seems like, on what to do with this building. And what we voted on was kind of a compromise by eliminating, originally the lease included a small amount of space on the 3rd floor. So with that, I'll move approval of G9.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the roll call to approve item G9. Councilmember Larson?
Yes.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy?
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams?
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor? Councilmember McIntosh?
Aye.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Item G10.
Item G10, Mayor Joynes' recommendation for appointment to the Tourism Development Authority, Dana Bryson, Hotel Motel 100 rooms or less category, term expiring October 2021.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Motion, Councilmember Larson, seconded by Councilmember McIntosh. Any further discussion? To the roll call, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. And now item G11.
Item G11, Mayor Joynes' recommendation for appointment to the Public Art Commission, Clifford Dossel, term expiring December 2023.
Is there a motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Scipio moves approval, second by Councilmember McIntosh. Any further discussion? Thank you. To the roll call approving this appointment, Councilmember Larson.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Mundy.
Aye.
Councilmember Scipio.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
Yes.
Councilmember Taylor.
Yes.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Aye.
Councilmember Burke.
Yes.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. That ends our agenda. Any council member have a comment they'd like to make before we adjourn? Councilmember Adams, Mayor Pro Tem Adams.
I just want everyone to again, keep in mind, Happy New Year, as the other council members have said. But we still have a trying year ahead of us with this virus and all of the things that, as we're seeing in the news, just play out every day. I would just hope that with this year, our citizens, as well as us, have a vision of hope. There's light at the end of the tunnel, but it may be a little ways off. But I just want us to stay as positive as we can be and as thoughtful as we can be, and understand, the citizens understand that sometimes some of the actions that we have to take is to protect them and the city. So it's going to be interesting to see what plays out over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
I agree. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Let the record show that all 8 voted in favor of adjourning. We're adjourned.
Goodbye.
Adjourned.
Good night.